All right, we're back for our final set of categories of questions that are in the expectation dashboard. Let's see what's next. Okay, category 11, expectations around student autonomy. Now this category has 4 questions, but they're all really critical. Actually, there's not 4. There's really more like 10 or 12, but some of them are, if the answer is this way, then there's more questions. They're not relevant if the answer is the other way. So the one I picked here, and this comes from a coaching experience, is it okay for me to get help from other professors when I need to? And the follow-up question to that is, if so, if it is okay, should I check with you first? So different professors may have different feelings about this, but I had one coaching client who had an advisor who got very, very mad with them because without checking with the advisor first, they went off and approached a different advisor to get some help. Now, this person was trying to do an interdisciplinary project, so it made perfect sense that they would need outside help, but the particular advisor was very flustered by this, by not being checked with first. Other advisors, maybe not. So that's category 11. Category 12, expectations around having 2 advisors. Now, probably most of you will not be in this situation, but I have had people who are. And this can happen when the student is doing something interdisciplinary. And so they really do need professor from one expertise and professor for another expertise. Now, if you've ever worked for 2 bosses, you know this can be a nightmare. I mean, you do get the benefit of expertise from 2 people, but what if you're getting, for example, conflicting guidance from these 2 people? Because with all the scheduling challenges, maybe you don't have meetings with both of them at the same time. So the question here, let's see, how many questions do I have in this category? I have 8 questions in this category, so this is a rich territory. The one I'm highlighting here is, if I find myself stuck in a situation where I'm getting guidance from both of you, and the guidance is pointing in different directions, how should I bring that up? Now, I'm hoping that at least there will be an initial meeting with you and the 2 advisors to plan things out. It would be much better if every one of your project meetings had both advisors there. But ideally, you'd be able to ask this question to both of them at the same time because you put them in a position of responsibility. They need to negotiate that if they haven't already. Ironically, if you don't have a meeting with both of them at the same time and you ask them this question independently and they have different answers, they've caused the very problem that this question is trying to solve, and you're stuck in an infinite loop, I think. So anyway, but having 2 advisors can be great, but it can also bring lots of challenges. So a whole bunch of questions there. The next category is expectations around receiving critical feedback. Now, if you need to receive feedback from the advisor, if the advisor feels like you could be improving on something, getting in sync about that is key. So the question I'm highlighting here, oh yeah, okay. So I have 4 questions here, and listen to this one. If I come to realize that an adjustment to our collaboration dynamic would help make me progress faster, what's the best way to bring that up? Now, really what's happening behind this question is, or could be, something like, if the advisor's interpersonal style is abrasive enough and out of sync enough with your personal style, where you just find it really difficult to sustain receiving their bluntness about how they talk about things, it's going to cause all sorts of anxiety and psychological dynamics within you, all sorts of drag that's going to slow you down. And so you really don't want that drag. So you might be able to talk through this problem and find a way to make some adjustments, or at least Get yourself comfortable with the feedback more, because it's an opportunity for the professor to say things like, "It's just my style, it's not personal. Let's come up with a way for you to let me know if it's coming on too heavy," or some such. But this particular wording is true. It's not sugarcoating anything. It's just a way to talk about that problem. It's a way to bring up that problem without first saying something like, "You're always a jerk and I can't deal with it." That conversation isn't going to go well. Something like this, where you're talking about the dynamic, because really it's both of you. If you were a person who flourished under blunt feedback, this would not be a problem. So it's not necessarily useful to think of it's just the advisor's problem. It's a problem in the dynamic not being calibrated well. Okay, the last category is compensating for challenges and working remotely. Now, I think, the pandemic had already started when I started putting this stuff together, but inspiration for this category came from working with a student who was working remotely with an advisor before the pandemic. So it was kind of unusual for somebody to be in a different city and interacting with the professor. We're all much more familiar with working remotely and have a better grip on that. And I've even found there's advantages to working remotely, because if you're screen sharing like that, it's a lot easier to stay on the same page and share information, for example. But I'll just mention this because when you are working remotely, you do feel a little more disconnected from people, clearly. You don't have as much sense of what their internal state is. And so the question I've highlighted here, I think I have 5 questions in this category, to come right out and say periodically, how do you feel about my level of engagement with the work? The reason this question is here is because the situation was the advisor thought the student wasn't engaged at all. They kind of disappeared. Talking to the student was doing all kinds of work, but just not sharing stuff that he didn't think was worth sharing with the advisor and using up the advisor's time. He wanted to get further down the road to have something more in the bag before he bothered the advisor with it, but that was not clear, even though they were having conversations week to week. This behavior week to week made it look to the advisor like the student just wasn't getting stuff done, because the student wasn't mentioning all the other work he'd been doing that he thought was part of this process. So that's it. That's the 14th category. Maybe things will be added to this at some point, I don't know. But expectation management, if you can get on top of this, this is something that will serve every collaboration you have in life. Any people you're working with at a future job, any life partner you have, any spouse, your kids. Expectation management is like the golden passport to happiness and stress reduction. So if you're rigorous about it and make sure that things don't slip by, things are going to go better. All right, we'll see you in the next video.